congratulations on the brand new single. I've been listening to it quite a bit lately, and I feel like I'm sort of getting more enjoyment with each listen, which I think is not something I typically encounter. So, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? When you release a song, you never know how it's going to be received. So kind of the past week has been pretty cool. It's always one of those things like Thursday night before a song comes out, you're like, okay, I hope it gets these things. And it was the first time I think I've ever released a song that there was not one thing that I had hoped for that didn't come to fruition on that day. So that was kind of like I actually got to enjoy it, versus being like, okay, I hope I get this or I hope I get this and hope the song is heard here and whatnot. So that was really cool. And then also, I mean, even on a radio front, we haven't quite gone to radio yet, but we've seen it kind of get picked up for some spotlight slots and stuff like that. So it's been really cool. It's kind of unlike anything I've been a part of. So it's been pretty fun.
Wow. No, that's amazing. I mean, maybe speaking on that sort of anxiety surrounding a release, because I would imagine that there's positive anxiety in the sense of excitement, and then maybe like a nervousness of, is this going to perform the way I'd like? I mean, how do you balance those two emotions? Because I think that to be a successful artist, it's, being able to remain calm through those periods is super key.
Yeah, it's kind of a conflicting feeling for sure because I think you get so excited to kind of put out these things you've been working on for so long, but obviously as an emerging artist, you kind of want each song to kind of bring you to a different level that you haven't seen before. And so you're kind of, I mean, those initial streaming numbers are kind of a detection of where that song is headed a little bit. So it is an interesting balance of like anxiety of I hope this song does well, but also I can't wait for people to hear it because I think this is the most kind of at home I've ever felt with my sound, doing this project that we've been working on. So I mean, obviously to see it going the way that you want it to, just kind of like brings that, as long as you're putting your authentic self into your music, I think that's kind of when people start to hook onto it.
How long exactly have you been in the music space?
Yeah, so I cut my first record in 2019. It was a very DIY kind of project, and that was really my first dive into like the industry side of it. I had been playing shows with my band and stuff like that around British Columbia, but had never really been a part of the industry. And so it's, I guess, what is it? About five years now. I've really
Yeah.
been in the industry. Yeah.
Okay. So were you based in BC mostly, or was it Alberta?
So I'm born and raised in Alberta, but I went to BC for university to learn about the business side of the music industry, and then stayed there for a little bit, kind of building my performance chops and learning about the industry and all of that.
And now you're in Nashville.
I am. Yeah, I've been here for about 2 years now.
Wow. So, I mean, that to me is always a huge thing when I see artists from Canada, because I'm from Alberta as well. When I see people graduating and moving to the hub of their craft, and obviously for the type of music you make, it's Nashville. Maybe if you could speak to that, what drove you to really make that a reality in your life? And what were some of the biggest challenges of relocating to Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of artists kind of hit this wall where you're like, okay, where do I want my career to go? And obviously, as an artist, you dream big. You all of these shows you grew up watching, the CMA awards, all of that stuff. You're like, that's a that's a goal. The Grand Ole Opry to be kind of in that realm of things. And I was kind of getting to the point I felt like where I'm like, am I going to be able to accomplish those things from where I was living in BC? And it just didn't seem like that would. I think it would be a lot harder road because you're not in the mix. So that's kind of what brought me down here. But I think obviously rebuilding your network and everything is probably one of the hardest things because you're moving down and there's a ton of Canadians down here, which is amazing. So you get to kind of have that home base a bit, but kind of integrating yourself into a whole new industry because it's just there's so much down here and everybody is down here that's kind of a part of these places that you want to be a part of.
Yeah, I think especially right now there seems to be a huge influx of Canadians. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people who've relocated to Nashville, especially from Alberta. But it is interesting. So, would you say that you had a really big network that was pre-existing before you moved, or did you sort of go there from scratch and say, okay, I'm going to build something up in Nashville?
I would say I had like a network enough to kind of get the ball rolling. So I
Okay.
knew a lot of Canadians down here. That's, I think, where we all really start, right? We moved down here and we're like, okay, at least we have this group. And then kind of knew a little bit in the industry, but it wasn't until I moved down here that I kind of felt like I had the bandwidth to take that on, because you want to meet people, you want to grab coffees and all that. And it's hard to do when you're not stationed here. So I think, yeah, I think moving down here, obviously, it doesn't take too long to grow your network here because people are out and about every night of the week. But yeah, I think once I moved here is when I saw the growth in that.
Okay. So approximately how long after you got to Nashville would you say that you're sort of looking around you and saying, "Wow, like all these things are opening up. I'm getting these new opportunities." Would you say it was pretty quick, or did it take a couple months of really building that network?
I think it was a couple of months to kind of feel like I had something going on here. I mean, you're moving to a completely different country and everything is so different here. So, yeah, I think a couple months after for me, it just made sense. I mean, even the way I was writing music was different because you're just surrounded by it all the time. And I think that's what a lot of people say moving down here. You're like, you have this one idea of the kind of artist you want to be in Canada, and then you move to a hub. I mean, even Calgary would be something like that, right? You
Yeah.
move to a hub where everybody's writing and playing all of the time, and you get to hone in on that. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. And I think that's pretty cool to be surrounded by.
For sure. I would imagine it opens up a whole new perspective. And, I have some limited experience. I did a month run in New York City recently. And I feel like
Oh
just after
wow.
that month, yeah, I mean, you can just see how much more open the opportunities are. So it's definitely relatable what you're saying. So, how about in terms of the first big opportunity you did get? Obviously you had your first CMA Fest, which, this past year. Congratulations on that. I mean, that must have been a whole nother level.
Thank you. Yeah. Honestly, I would say CMA Fest was, I mean, there's a ton of different moments. You're playing things like Whiskey Jam in the listening room that, you visit and you get to go watch people play and don't get to actually do it. So to come down here and get to play those things was huge. But getting to play CMA Fest was an absolute dream. My mom was with me and we just had this whole day, and it was just such an incredible, like, wow, like we're doing it kind of moment.
Yeah.
And that was special to share with her because it's really hard to explain those things. So I think CMA Fest was probably my biggest, like, holy smokes moment.
Are you from a family that was initially very supportive of your career, or did it take like mom and dad sort of some time to come around on that?
My family is, I mean, sometimes they're like, why did we tell you guys to follow your dreams? Because there's such crazy paths that they lead you down. But my parents were always very much like, follow your dreams, follow your passions, that kind of stuff. My sister's a female hockey player, and so we kind of go down that path together a little bit sometimes. So no, I grew up singing with my dad, and then when I was like 13, 14, I started to show interest in wanting to perform, and he's like, "Well, you have to put the work in, but if you want to take a swing at it, like, go for it." But it was all very much I was leading the charge, and then they would show up to my little singing competitions and stuff like that. So yeah, they've always been incredible with it.
So they basically encouraged you, and maybe they didn't see it becoming like a full-on career, but they were open to wherever it might go.
I think so. Yeah. And then once they kind of started seeing what I was doing and kind of the level of commitment I had to it, then they've been kind of 2 feet in ever since. And I mean, even the past week, hearing my dad was driving the other day and he heard my song on our hometown radio station, and he was just so excited because, that's just kind of part of his dream as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's so huge when you can see the impact it has on the people around you as well. And I've heard people say that if their parents didn't support them as much, as they did, when we're talking about parents who did show love to the career path. Some people say they don't think they could have done it the same without that support. I mean, do you feel like if you came from a family that just wanted a traditional path, that you would have been able to excel as far as you have?
I agree. I think it would totally be different, especially because it's in this particular career path. It's not streamlined. There's so many ups and downs and so many moments where you're like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I be doing this? And I mean, I remember driving home from work one day when I had just graduated university, and I called my dad and just said, I don't know if I should be doing this. Maybe I should go back to school and get a real job and all of that. And he just said, there's no plan B. Like, it is what it is. It's going to be up and down, but there's no plan B. And that was kind of the moment for me where I'm like, okay, we're kind of all in this now. So when I need that little pick me up, I always call my family, and it would be a lot harder if they weren't like that.
Yeah, no, that's so amazing though that you've retained that connection with the family throughout the career, and that it seems to be even growing as you get further into it. So that answered one of my questions. If you ever were, thinking about quitting and how you pulled yourself to the other side of it, so that was one of the answers. So I guess the next question would be: you mentioned your father hearing you on the radio, and that was like a really big moment that connected with him. What was the first or biggest moment for you that you heard your music somewhere, or like a reaction to your music that really resonated with you personally?
Um, yeah, I think it was, I mean, so I did a radio tour when I had released my first project and had no idea what I was doing at all. And we were, we had just got home and we pulled up the driveway and my song came on the radio. And I was like, it was just one of those moments where we're like, that's crazy because I used to sit in the back of the car all the time and be like, I wish my song was on the radio,
Yeah.
as a I think that was probably the first time that I like felt that and feeling like this is a career path I can pursue, because I think it's just you're taking little nuggets along the way, being like, okay,
Yeah.
I think it means I'm on the right path.
Exactly. And then when you see it all, accumulate over the years or over the months, I think is when it really hits you. Because yeah, I mean, day to day in a career like this, like you said, it's hard to know if you're making the right moves sort of moment by moment. But I think when you can look back at, I did this here, I did this there, you can see the accumulation. I don't know if that's relatable.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I think it's it's one of those things where you kind of have to reality check yourself.
Mm.
I think with anything, we're human, our standards are constantly changing. So something that I couldn't imagine happening a year ago, and then it happens and you're like, oh, but I wanted this. It's like, okay, come back down to earth.
Yeah.
You have to take it as it comes and appreciate it because it's a lot of highs and lows. So when you're in a high, you kind of just have to soak it in.
Yeah. And I mean, how do you handle those lows and sort of take it in stride? Is there like a specific, conscious thought process of, okay, I have to, think of it a certain way, or is it, always adjusting based on the different scenario?
I think for me, my biggest thing is like, is there anything I can do to control the situation? And if there's not, then I have to just like water off a duck's back a little bit. But
Yeah.
if there's anything I think that I can do about it, I'm like, I'll exhaust all options. And then once I do that, then it's kind of, I mean, it's out of my hands at that point. So I think it's taken me a while to get there. And I think in this past year, kind of just feeling more confident in what I'm doing and stuff like that. I'm trying a lot more to be kind of on that level where you just can't lose sleep over it so much because you would never sleep.
Yeah, seriously. So it's
Yeah.
sort of about releasing that control is what it sounds like, right? Because especially once you've exhausted all your options, I think that it's like you say, you'll never sleep if you let that keep you up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, the longer you're in something like this, when it's your time, it's your time. And I have come to really believe that where, had something huge happen for me a year ago, I might not have been ready for it the same way that I feel like I am now. So I think it's all timing. You just have to believe that there's a right time for you.
Maybe circling back to the CMA Fest a little bit. I mean, talk to me about some of the cast of characters that was there, because I would imagine, as somebody who's in country, that's like the Avengers, gathering. It's like everybody's there, they're all together. It's like they're superheroes. Who were some of the people you got to speak with or watch perform that really made an impact on you?
I mean, it was just even seeing people kind of go through because we were all kind of in a collective green room. And so you have people like Emily Ann Roberts, who's doing so well down here. And I went on right after Dolly had her segment and stuff like that. So kind of seeing all of these artists of all different levels in one kind of area was really cool that way. And you kind of keep to yourself. I was so nervous. I'm like, okay, I cannot screw this up, you know? But everybody was just so kind, which I mean, in a situation like that, it's a little bit higher stress because you're sticking to timelines and there's a process, right? So yeah, I think seeing how they handled themselves in all of those situations was pretty cool.
How long do you get to actually rehearse before doing a show like that?
We, well, it was acoustic. So there was three of us on stage. Well, there's no sound check or anything.
Oh, wow.
So we played for 20 minutes, but we did like an hour and a half rehearsal like the night
Okay.
before to make sure everything was buttoned up. But yeah, so it is very much like you walk up and you just put your game face on.
It definitely shows the dedication, though, to be able to take that situation and really rock it.
For sure. And I think Nashville, that it kind of trains you for that a little bit
Hmm.
because in Nashville, you show up and you plug your guitar in and you start. Like that's just kind of what it is. And so had I not maybe been here for the year and a half prior to that, I might not have been as comfortable. But I think yeah, being in Nashville trains you for a lot of different situations.
What are some of the other situations you feel like it's sort of trained you for, or maybe perspective that you could take to other places and say, okay, it's pretty different in Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, I'm a perfectionist to a fault. So trying to kind of mediate that need to be like great all of the time. I get so nervous about forgetting lyrics
Hmm.
and messing up chords and all of that stuff. And there's been a few situations in Nashville that I'm like, it's three songs and you want to get it right. And I think learning to just trust yourself that like the music, you don't have to be in your brain right before you walk on stage running through all of your lyrics. I think that's been a big thing for me, just knowing that like you've performed in high pressure situations before, this is no different, just have fun kind of.
Yeah, so it's about trusting your ability and the knowledge of your own material, basically, and just trusting that you have it in the bag.
I think so. Because it's very easy to psych yourself out. And I always say it, I'll be so nervous. And consciously, I know that I'm never better when I'm nervous. Like,
Right.
I'm better when I have adrenaline and when I'm excited to play, not when I'm nervous. And so, trying to mediate those nerves, I think, is something that Nashville has really helped me with.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. That there's so many performances going on, and it's all in such a close radius that it must really train you for all those scenarios in a big way. I wonder about the day to day of being an artist. If you were to look at your career, what would you say is the hardest part of the day to day that is not related to the actual creative process of making the music? I mean, is there anything about just being a musical artist that is really tough otherwise?
I mean, yeah, I think it's funny because I think a lot of times you wish you could just do music all day, every day. And sometimes I find you have to be really like intentional about setting aside time to do music because the admin side of it is so big.
Hmm.
So making sure like your release is ready, you have your photo shoots, you have your emails, all of those things. So I mean, half the time I'm sitting at home just like puttering away on my on my computer trying to make sure everything is in line and stuff like that. So I would say that's kind of the big catch of being an artist is you're not really being an artist all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially for people who don't have that management team yet. They're not at the point where they have a publicist. That must be really challenging. And I would imagine, doing that before you reach this point in your career must have been, a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think you're trying to kind of get to the place of having a publicist and having more of a team and all of that. And then you get those things and what you do just shifts a little bit. It's almost
Right.
feel like I can be a little more productive now because I'm not working on like those small little things that is maybe being taken on by somebody else. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that the job stops, it's just shifts. And yeah, but I'm very much like if I'm not doing something that day, I feel very unproductive. So I
Mhm.
try to just keep in the loop.
Always keep going. Yeah, I mean, you're always posting as well. You keep the fans very much updated about your moves, and I think the promo you put up too is always like super creative and engaging. Like I saw you surfing and stuff like that. I think it's cool. So I mean, how much involvement do you have in those actual ideas of the promotion you're going to do on socials?
I do majority of it. I collaborate with my team a bit on certain things like that. But that surfing thing was, I mean, content is such a situation now. I'm like, what are we doing? Oh yeah. So, I mean, my family and I, we had so much fun with that
It looked
surfing thing.
like so much fun. I was like, this is such a great idea, and it's just I loved it.
It was so funny. Yeah, I mean, we're always brainstorming, trying to figure out like what to post and how to post it. And I am I feel like I type and stuff with a certain tone, so I trying to maintain all of that in my promo so it's not too much like, "Hi, go listen to my song."
Right.
So trying to keep it interesting.
Yeah, it is a fine balance, right? Because it's also like if you promote constantly, people almost tune out of what you have to say because it's just they know it's another promotion for what you're going to do. So I would imagine that there's a lot of thought that goes into just general content as well, just to keep it fresh.
I think so. Yeah, and making sure it's not staying the same all the time. I mean, for a release week, I think you always kind of prepare for there to be more promotional stuff, just kind of like
Yeah.
keeping everybody updated on what's going on. But yeah, for sure. Outside of that, it's like you want to be posting just kind of about your life and letting people in that way because I think that's how you gain fans, right? For them to know a little bit more about you and like relate to that.
Taylor, thank you so much for making the time and keep killing it. We're definitely loving what we're hearing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.